All right. Hello and welcome. Hope you can guys hear us super well. My name is Pavel Buja. I am joined by Jean, but we're not doing a dev stream. John,
Hey,
how are
hey,
you?
I'm great.
Can everyone hear us? Is everything all good? I guess so because people are replying. Hope everyone in chat is also well. As you know, this is a special episode because we don't have a guest from the community. We have Jean from our team because a lot of you have been asking a lot of questions balance related. We have the balance master himself, part
Whoa,
of
whoa, whoa, whoa.
the
Not master, not master.
Jean, first of all, before we start the normal rundown of what we do here on Twig, which is red news, community
Mhm.
news, memes, and stuff like that, how long have you been with CDPR as a company?
A bit more than 1 year now. I joined in October 2020.
Mm-hmm. Nice, nice. And where are you originally from? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm French.
No,
I come right from
surprise.
France. Yeah.
Awesome, awesome.
Um,
So yeah, you joined
yeah.
us. I know that you're a big card game nerd.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say big, like I'm not necessarily the biggest player, but I did try out a bunch of card games, right? Like many people, I played Hearthstone, Yu-Gi-Oh! I also played a bunch of like niche ones.
Mm-hmm.
Like I used to play this Japanese card game called Weißenschwarz.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also pretty fond of like a bunch of more city game card games, right? Like Twilight Struggle is a really great one. Um, I think uh, I'm gonna get the name wrong. It's not Citadel, the deck building game, right? But it's fine.
I don't think so.
The one thing is that I actually didn't play that much of MTG. Like, of course, I know the basics of the games, but
True.
I haven't actually ever really got into it.
Nice. You called yourself out. Yeah, we recently played a draft at work. So yeah, it was yeah. I won the draft. Not bragging. But yeah, Jean. I got to know Jean a little bit more through that. It was a nice experience. Jean,
Hmm.
so as you know, in Twig, we go over what's happening throughout, what has been happening throughout this week, and we also dive into what the community's been up to,
Yeah.
and we also show a couple memes, and we're just before World Masters, so I think we'll start with that. So yeah, World Masters happening this weekend. There is a lot gonna happen during this event. So apart from having the best eight players from this season, there will be a ton of leaks. There will be an awesome, epic, cool. Jean's also in this pre-final segment. It's getting a lot of awesomes and cools. Like you should for sure check it out. Yes, Geralt, thank you for that. I also will be wearing suits, yes. But most importantly, we also have a divination challenge, which if you haven't participated in it yet, now is your time because today at 11:59, so almost at midnight, is it the last time to vote. And remember that if you vote and if you get your picks right, you will get some cool stuff. And actually, the rewards this time have been buffed up a little bit, so they're a little bit better than what we had previously. Highly encouraged to watch and highly encouraged to pick your winners. Even if you don't know them, just random pick. Who knows? You might win, right? You never know. So yeah, that's the most important stuff when it comes to all the red
Yeah.
news. Uh,
Super exciting.
yeah, Jean, are you going to be watching or not?
Probably not the entire thing, but yes, of course I'm gonna be watching. It's always super exciting to see the deck list that player brings.
Yeah,
And of course, as part of my job, it's super exciting to see how these end up impacting the way other players and like the community as a whole play the game.
yeah.
And of course, this is maybe some tease,
Mm.
some exciting stuff.
Yes,
And
yes.
I'm also going to be interesting to see how the community reacts to that.
Don't worry. I also shared the deck lists of the players with you, so you can dive into them before the weekend.
Mhm.
I mean, it's almost end of the day, so highly don't highly encourage you to do so, but if you still have some time, you can check them out. But yeah, of course, this is something that you guys also like to look at in terms of like what the pro players are bringing,
Absolutely.
what's in their matchups, what are they targeting, or maybe I just have to say, like, without going into any details or spoilers, the meta for this one is like in terms of the decks that were brought by the top 8 players, is more diverse than what we had in the
Ooh.
previous open. So I think it'll be super interesting to watch. So yeah. Where is Jean from? Jean is from France. Where particularly in France, if you can.
Oh, basically Paris. I
Paris.
did study for a few years in the north of France, in a town near Lille.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm basically from Paris.
Yeah, nice. I've been to Paris once. Thing is, Paris has places which are super nice and places which are kind of shady. And I think when I went first time, I lived in a very shady place.
Mhm. It's really hard for me to judge, right? Because home. So like a lot of people from France don't necessarily like Paris, but
Mm-hmm.
it's really hard for me to have an objective view on it.
Yeah,
I,
yeah, it's
I
hard.
like the place.
Yeah, people think like Warsaw sucks, but I still feel, it feels like home. And I mean, maybe it's not perfect, but I still kind of like it. Moving on, from we just went into talking about cities. So moving back to the topic, which is community news. We have a lot of items on the board. As you
Uh-huh.
know, the community, with cooperation with Ryan, our meddling mage, haha, Ryan has been spreading throughout pieces of arts. And actually, we have the last part of the art, which we'll show you today at the end. Well, not the end of the whole thing, but at the end of these segments. Some of you already guessed the character from like when we showed like first parts of it, so kudos to you. But yeah, you'll get the final leak to have the full piece of the puzzle, and also the puzzle will be even more, I don't know. I lost. No, that doesn't work. The puzzle will make more sense after the weekend. Oh, there we go. So those have been split around. We have been posting on GWENT. They went to most of the major esports teams. So TLG, Team Elder Blood. We had ESC Card Gaming. Everybody showing pieces of this puzzle, apart from the normal stuff which they do, which is, of course, meta snapshots, how to reach pro rank by ESC Card Gaming. Big fan of ESC Card Gaming, and not only because they sent me a hoodie back in a couple of years ago, which I still wear. But yeah, I like their content. It's super cool. Yeah, Forza Italia as always. Apart from that, Flake Mirror episode 7, a peek behind Gwent Masters. So they got going behind the scenes of what we're up to. Yeah, if you're interested of what's happening behind the scenes on tournaments, what casters need to like bear through with us, how their prep looks like, how the rehearsals look like, check that out. More information is there. And another Gwent beginner's guide, this time on Nilfgaard by Sawyer 188. 888, actually, 3 eights there. So that's episode 17. I think we should do one episode once, like me, Ryan, or you. It would be nice. Could go and beginner guide. I think that would be cool. And and then awesome Thronebreaker characters drawn by one of the Reddit users. Highly recommend to check it out. There's more than one, but yeah, Queen Meave is here since she is the poster person for the game because she's awesome. Yeah, a lot of stuff going on. A lot of stuff going on,
Yeah.
which is good. It's good to see the community alive and well and happy, I think. Happy, more or less. But we'll get to balance and happiness later on because there's some
You've
questions.
mentioned the puzzle. It's been really funny to see
Yeah.
the community interacting with it, and honestly, how crazy good you guys are at like
Yeah.
figuring out stuff. Like the drawing over when there was only 3 pieces was amazingly accurate.
Yeah, Claymore
Oh
posted
my
that.
god.
It was a good meme. It was a really good meme. Speaking of memes, actually, someone also completed this part, which is in the meme, is of course the Carrack guard.
Ah.
I mean, it has to. I mean, it had to happen. Reddit is known for adding the Carrack guard everywhere. And then another meme, under the sea. That's where I'll be, under the sea. So So playing Skellige because it's meta, and then playing Skellige because you unlock the better music. I know people really like the old music. So yeah, without further ado, since I mean the Karak is a good choice. It's a good choice, but that's not the face. This is the face. This is the face you've been looking for. Yeah, you all guessed it. It's Milva. This is an awesome art. This is incredible art. Really love art, which is flying, like showing action while being a static image. I really love this, and I think this one gives Milva's character like 100%. So there it is. There it is. That was under the
True
bonus meme.
sharpshooter.
Yeah, true sharpshooter. Exactly. All right, Jean. Let's circle back to you now, since we got the run of the business. So you already told us you're from Paris, France. You told us that how long you've been working with CDPR. You told us that you are a card game nerd. What are other things that you like to get into, and apart from card games? Is there any games that you enjoy playing in the free time, or what's your go-to?
I play a lot of games with friends. So one is the game I've been nerding a lot on, like for month and month, has been Deep Rock Galactic. I don't know if you know that game.
No, to be honest, no.
Oh, I'm really fond of it. It's mix. The easiest way to describe it is a mix between Left 4 Dead and Minecraft. You play space dwarfs going
Okay,
into caves to mine out minerals.
that sounds cool.
It's pretty cool. Give it a go.
Nice. Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah. Aside from that, trying out the new stuff. Recently, Halo Infinite came out,
Mm-hmm.
so give it a go. Um, I sometimes play some Super Smash Bros. Melee with a friend of mine. Reverse of Hazard. Yeah, this kind of stuff.
Yeah. You're also a fan of anime, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Oh,
Without
yeah.
without calling you out in any bad way, but yeah, saying that you're a fan of anime.
Oh, sorry, I cannot hear you.
No, you can't hear me. Or is this okay?
You blanked out for like
Okay.
2 seconds.
Good. So yeah, I just said that you're a fan of anime without calling it
Mhm.
in a bad way, because chat will probably say "whoa weeps" and stuff like that. So yeah, we're staying away from that.
But yeah,
um,
I watched Sonny Boy lately.
mhm,
Very interesting anime by a, a guy was has directed Aka 13 before, I believe,
mhm.
and was gonna be directing the sequel to Tatami Galaxy. Um, yeah, very interesting in terms of uh, kind of experimental in terms using the abilities in storytelling that the video offers you, right?
Mhm.
And an interesting use of animation.
Nice. Yeah, chat is saying that jokes on us because they're all weeps in chat. So well, we're in a good place. Nice. What got you to apply to CDPR to become a game designer? That's my
So
question.
yeah, it's actually very simple. In my in my fourth years of studies or something, I was introduced to Gwent, and that was when the game was still in closed beta actually.
Mm-hmm.
And I was really into it because at the time I was it's the kind of stuff I was looking for basically. Card games with um, like a different approach to card game, and
Mm-hmm.
the idea that there was multiple win conditions, right? There's 3 rounds and you only need to win 2 of them. Uh, which is like one of the stuff I really enjoy, for instance, for Twilight Struggle, which I
Mm-hmm.
mentioned before
Yeah.
prior. And so I played it, and when I started having to look for internships, yes, getting to work on Gwent and CDPR was kind of a dream, and well, the time didn't work out.
Yeah.
And like 1 year ago, 1.5 years ago, I was really randomly sent the the announce of CDPR looking for a gameplay designer for Gwent. by a classmate because it was basically a meme that I wanted to work on Gwent. And yeah, so I was super happy about it. I applied, and eventually I got there.
Yeah, so
Which
the
still
meme
feels,
became a thing.
yeah, and it feels a bit unreal that like it was one of a dream of mine, and somehow it is true.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, it's been really cool to have you. Plus, from the design team, I think you're the most willing to appear before a camera, actually talk to people, which I think the community really
Fun.
appreciates. Because I know that talking about balance is difficult sometimes. I also know that it's controversial. Everybody's very opinionated when it comes to things connected to balance and how it should look like and what should be balanced and how it should be balanced. But yeah,
Yeah, it's a complicated topic. There's also the problem of expectations, which
yeah.
is from the moment we start promising and telling that we're going to do stuff, then we're forced to do it. And the thing is, well, opinions change all the time. The process that we go through to design and balance the game is very iterative. We're always thinking and
Mm-hmm.
discussing and debating and evolving in our positions. And that makes it harder to talk about it prior to the changes actually being committed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, super well said. Um, so you joined CDPR. It was something that became a thing. You've been with us for quite some time. How do you feel like when you started, like because you were a fan of the game and you were playing it before, when you joined the company, what has changed to you for you when it comes to like looking at the game and the approach? Like,
Mm.
do you see it in a different way, or do you feel like getting to see how everything works, how it's structured? Because I've seen like how you guys you do the designs when they actually are implemented in the game. It looks super cool in terms of like things being put together, strings tied to one another. So how was the experience for you?
Wow, this is not an easy question.
It's a tough
Uh,
one.
I'm
Yeah,
trying
you
to
have some
think.
time to how to
Yeah,
answer this one.
I think it's very hard to
Hmm.
picture that process
When you're
when you're
outside,
actually
right?
there. Yeah, so I had hopes.
Hmm.
For instance, I really hoped that it was what do you say again? A collegial process, right?
Hmm.
Like all designers pitching in and debating and everything, and it is. I love this.
Surprise,
I,
surprise.
I love this. Like these basically we spend our days in calls just debating and talking and yeah, trying to find ideas and refine these ideas, right? And it's not always an easy process because there is such a thing as creative satiety. I'm not pronouncing it right, but
Something
basically
like that.
getting
Yeah,
exhausted
yeah.
from trying to, and sometimes it's even really hard to stay on point because you start going off topic and it's hard to come back from this.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, I think what I'm seeing now after 1 year of work
Mm-hmm.
is how much we are evolving and gaining in maturity in our design.
Yeah.
In like not only the ideas like the card that we print, but also the process
Mm-hmm.
through which we land on these ideas,
Yeah.
and um, that's really interesting to me.
Yeah, I also like seeing it from the backseat. Let's say, like I've been with the project since its early beginnings, and kind of looking how you guys justify the changes. And when we talk about the changes, like you guys come always like super well prepared with all the answers to all our
Mm.
questions, or whenever we're discussing with you anything that is mentioned by the community, like we bounce it off of you guys, and whatever you're replying, makes like total sense, and it's backed by facts, by testing and stuff like that. So it's not something that, oh, we just changed it because we feel like
Yeah.
1 point here, 1 point there, there's like general stuff, let's see how it works. But there is more that kind of comes with this, right?
Yeah. And I think part of the reason why we seem to prepare is because inside of the team we are not. Like because it's like these people talking together and we don't share the same opinions, and that's completely fine.
Which is
That's actually
great,
super
right?
important. Yeah, it's super important. And so we have to convince one another, and we have to evolve in our position and our understanding. And sometimes you're right, sometimes you're not, and that's super important. And sometimes we're not right as a team in general. that that's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine as long as we acknowledge it, and we learn from this.
Yeah, and
And
from this like the creative thing kind of
yeah.
happens, because you're having discussions, everybody has their own opinions, and you're bouncing those opinions off of one another, and then you're kind of coming to a conclusion like how you would like to proceed, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, in when we are going through this debating process, for instance, for balance changes, we used we use our feelings, we use logical reasoning,
Mm-hmm.
we use stuff we've seen from the community, we use data. And sometimes this doesn't work out for you. Like, for instance, you say, well, I feel like the card is not used at all, and then you go check the data to prove your point, and the card is in 20% of that faction deck, and you're like, okay.
Yeah.
I guess this didn't work out.
How hard is it to like balance stuff knowing that there is a whole community pressuring you to do so? Like, oh, change this, oh, change that, oh, this is broken, oh, this needs to be played, oh, this shouldn't be played.
Hmm.
How big of an impact is this on you guys?
Um, it's it's hard. It would be weird to say anything else, right? I think one of the difficult part is that for um like for all of the complaints we get, for instance, on Reddit or everything, there are people that exist which have the opposite opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And um if you make changes only based on this, you're also making other people sad.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
and and taking everything into account and trying to imagine what is the perception and opinion of these people which do not talk because they are satisfied, and so
Mm-hmm.
usually they don't express themselves as much as the people which are dissatisfied. That can be really hard.
Yeah.
And well, we are human, right? And we doubt ourselves, and thanks God we do, because that's the way you learn, right? And evolve. Um, so sometime when you open Reddit every day and you see only negativity coming from Reddit, uh, it is not easy. It is not easy to stay positive
Yeah.
and and think that you're on the right path.
Yeah, but
So
I like how you guys always defend like your decisions, or you like we tell you something, people haven't complained about this and this and that, and then you're like, well, but, and then you go into
no.
like a whole discourse with us, and we go back and forth, we discuss these things. And I think it's really good, and it's really good that we get to meet and pass on the community stuff to you guys, while you guys talk about the stuff which is related to how you work, what you've discussed, what came out of your testing, and based off of that, we also try to find a way how we can communicate stuff. Yeah. You're also big on writing, right? Can we expect more articles coming out from your pen, let's say,
Yeah.
to the community?
Uh, yeah. It's an idea that we're thinking of. Maybe expliciting some of our design philosophy and processes.
Nice.
Um,
Yeah, I think the hardcore players,
eventually.
or the people that are here in chat who've been with the community for a long time will appreciate like in-depth articles about the design processes,
Mhm.
or the ideas that you have. And I think you're very good at also taking those ideas and putting them into paper.
Thanks.
So yeah, good stuff on that. Okay. Question that is connected to CDPR as a whole. Have you ever played The Witcher?
Oh my god, you're putting me on the spot. Um, I am very ashamed to say that I have only played The Witcher for 1 hour. I
Oh,
didn't even play Gwent in The Witcher,
oh! I also
and
didn't.
I
I
only
also didn't
played
play
it
it.
when I arrived in CDPR. Like I
Oh,
genuinely discovered Gwent as a game when it was
nice.
standalone.
Yeah, that's also incredible.
Um,
I really appreciate people who came into the company without playing anything else apart from Gwent. It's like Gwent is what got them hooked, which makes me, as a person who's been working on Gwent a long time, feel really happy because I mean that's where you started. Like then you checked out The Witcher and stuff like that, but you know you started off with the card game, which is even better.
yeah, and to me, it's definitely part of the appeal of the game. Like from the get go, the way the universe was being um, transmitted to me through the cards, through the flavor texts. It's part of the thing that really got me hooked.
Mm-hmm.
Like this gritty political universe.
Okay. Yeah, that's the world of The Witcher for you. Very very grayish and grim and stuff like that. Speaking of which, season 2 of the Netflix series is coming soon, so for sure we'll be watching that.
I actually
Yeah.
watched
Mhm.
season one last winter,
Oh, nice.
and it was very funny because I was finally understanding some part of the plot. I'm like, oh, this character is this guard. Oh,
Yeah.
that's why it is in that position. I see.
So it all started to make more sense, right?
Yeah. Well, I want to point out I am very much the exception. All of my colleagues are very, very versed in the universe,
Yeah.
and and so usually I learned a lot of stuff just by them telling me about it,
Hmm. Yeah.
and it happened quite often actually because when you're looking for IDs. Going through the flavor approach is always a nice start in a way that you you can get inspiration.
Yeah. Yeah. What's your favorite card in Gwent or favorite character in this case?
Oh my
Like if you
god.
had to like name one.
Oh my god.
Putting you on the spot.
Oh, I think okay.
It can be
Uh,
something that you changed or designed or redesigned or
yeah.
whatever.
So the very simple answer is that back from that close beta day, the
Mm-hmm.
card that like immediately got my high
Mm-hmm.
was Vilgefortz
Ooh. Yeah.
because
I'm not surprised. Everybody
back
loved
then
them.
it already had like this very you know uh smart effect, and it was very meta back then,
Yeah.
and it's so gritty, right? Especially with that premium, it's
Oh.
so horrible.
Yeah.
And I actually do not know the character, right? I saw it in the Netflix survey, and I know that like there's something weird with that guy. I got completely I got some spoiled from
Mm-hmm.
the wiki, of course, when we were working on stuff. Um, but yeah, I'd have to
Nice.
say Vigifos got me hooked.
Yeah. Also, since you touched upon this subject, how important is when designing cards and their abilities? How important is the flavor of the character or what the character does in the universe? Because it's always been a thing. Is it still a thing?
It is. It definitely is. Like from one card to another, we take more or less liberties.
Mm-hmm.
Because it doesn't always fit. It's not always easy. But again, it's always a great starting point. And in terms of like the archetypes have been developed to try to make sense
Mm-hmm.
mechanically and in terms of flavor, right? So usually it ends up working together because when you're printing a character that goes well with an archetype, it turns out that the mechanics is gonna have also work well with the flavor of the
Mm-hmm.
character. And yeah,
That's
sorry,
it.
I kind of lost myself.
Simple. Cool. Awesome. Thank you for that one. All right. As some of you probably know, we have some questions from John that are coming straight from the community. Since we're like 30 minutes in, I wanted to move to those because I think We'll stop on a couple and probably talk a little bit more about them and kind of get more in depth. Of course, you left them on my Twitter, and I compiled some of them. So we chose a couple. It's quite the list, though. So we'll start with the first one. How do you feel about players' suggestions to balance reworks of older cards? Do you read them?
Mm.
Do you take them into consideration? Or do you already have plans ahead that the suggestions are little value for you? Like, how do you feel about this?
Okay, so we don't read all of them,
Mm-hmm.
but we definitely check them out from time to time.
Mm-hmm.
Usually they end up not being relevant to us because they don't fit in terms of design philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
Where like there are some key things which are very important when we design the game, but that are not necessarily understood
Mm-hmm.
outside of the design environment, which is like we were mentioning the possibility of doing articles earlier. Maybe that could be something we could explore
Yeah.
in these. And and yeah, usually they don't fit the way we design and what we want to achieve. But they are pretty interesting in that very often they are telling of the way player feel. So when you see like a rebalance of a popular card, and you see that like the card gets completely killed because of the rebalance, it kind of tells you, okay, there is frustration around that card.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Okay, that answers the question. Yeah, straight to the point. No, no, it's not valuable. Sorry, guys. I mean, it's like you said. It's
So not
really,
always like it doesn't mean that everything is bad, right?
yeah.
It's just very often that is the pattern that we see of like, okay, uh
It's much
we would
easier.
not be doing
Mhm.
things that way,
I
or
also
like
feel
we would never do this because of this.
Yeah, I also kind of agree. It's good if someone is highlighting the problem, like I see this maybe not working properly, and then ask for your like input or suggestions how you would fix it instead of providing like a whole rework and balance for a card. Because like you said, these people don't really know how we operate internally and what's our balance philosophy inside the company. So it's hard to put yourself in that mentality, right?
But one thing I could add is that I think like like so I think game design is it's very much a job, as in uh, I I need to think. Uh, so it is something in which you can have expertise, right? It's not something that you can just do right off the bat, but anyone can get started into it.
Mm-hmm.
And becoming a game designer is a process, a long process where you gain maturity in design, right?
Mm-hmm.
You need to keep an open mind, and also you need to practice, right? It's about getting a lot of experience. And I definitely like I wasn't sharing them, but I definitely was doing similar things back when I was still like a kid. And like I don't know, like when I was playing League of Legends, like everyone, I was a backseat designer, right? I
Mm-hmm.
looked at patch notes and I was like, what are the dev thinkings? um
But you
and
get that in any game, right? And
yeah.
and yeah, and I see also there's like comments in chat, people saying like what the philosophy is the philosophy designing new cards and making them stronger than previous cards in order to sell more, sets and stuff like that. No, like we've even talked about this, is like you are progressing and you're designing things which are new, which are different. A card game will not look the same throughout 4 to 5 years. You won't be designing in the same way. You will be changing the philosophy. You will be changing what you do, how you do it, and you won't be just sticking to, oh, we have to design it in this way. And I mean, you get this in any game, like old cards, old designs, old mechanics, old things are, back in the day when you were limited when it comes to the capabilities that you have, but you're growing and you're improving things and you're making things better. And instead of focusing on the good stuff, people are like, oh, well, those old ones, well, they suck now. This is power creep. And power
Yep.
creep is just like the buzzword that is in any competitive game that is online, right?
Philosophy can also be more subtle stuff. So, for instance, UX consideration, like how our players gonna have to play that card, like the number of inputs is gonna require. It can be, for instance, we never have player inputs in on what we call passive triggers.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, um, uh, because it is important for us to be able to plan when we're gonna request the inputs of the player. Like that's part of the stuff where like you see an effect and you're like, okay, yeah, no, we would never do this
Yeah.
because we only ask for input at specific times. Um, it can also be um wanting to keep the uh, like you see a complete overall of the effect, and sometimes we're like, well, no, this effect is a bit unique. We kind of like it, so instead of completely reworking it in something more mainstream, we'd rather do stats changes to the card or like add to it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it can be all of this tiny stuff which you only pick on by working with these people on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. Yeah, and someone just mentioned like since you guys feel like sometimes old cards should stay in the past, which I think we don't as an online CCG. Like we like to go back to things and rebalance them, change them, and stuff like that. That we should introduce rotation and rotation, like Magic does it. I think that was the example that was used in this comment. Like of course they rotate stuff out, but I feel like we do not need to rotate stuff out, but we can go back to like cards and we can change them and we can bring them back with updated abilities and stuff like that, which we have been
Yep,
doing, right? Yeah, so we're not
absolutely.
limited in this space, right? Yeah. Okay, that's a heavy first question. Second question. Will you add the doomed ability to defenders? So will defenders be doomed?
Uh, Honestly, something I could see happen one day. It's a decent solution if we considered that we had a real problem with defender. But our view on defenders at the time is that are currently we're fine with their current state.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like of course, depending on the state of the meta, you see more or less defenders, and there's definitely and like the source of that tweet is of course the concern there is with their reuse, right? But I think that in like the defenders are still not an obvious include in your
Mm-hmm.
decks. Um, Usually they're low on tempo. You like not low, but like lower, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, you need to take the time to lay them out, right? So you're missing turns for your engines to tick, or opposingly to give an answer to something.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so yeah, and we see that through the play rate, for instance, of these cards. Like, and as long as they're not obvious includes, I think we do like it as is.
Yeah, makes sense. All right, moving on. Will you return the third charge for overwhelming hunger leader ability?
Okay.
Hard no.
So yeah, no. Okay, so there is this. I've also often heard this argument of like overwhelming anger took a bullet for V. Yes, it did, but there was another reason, which is it should have taken a bullet a long time ago,
Mm-hmm.
and and the reason for this, and we explicitly did it at the time,
Mm-hmm.
is that the more charges overwhelming anger has,
Mm-hmm.
and the less you need to run consumes in your Death Wish and consume stack. And furthermore, consumes is something that you have to either lay out proactively, or you have to wait one turn before you're able to use the consume through a debug, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
And overwhelming anger completely removed that, right? You're able to instantly consume your Death Wish when it arrives on the board, and you don't give your opponent any chance to interact with it.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a big limiting factor in how you're able to design Death Wishes. And so the change to Overwhelming Anger, yes, it was a nerf, but it also was a way for us to open design space.
Mm-hmm.
And like with Overwhelming Anger being having less of these charges, less of this utility, then you're able to bring more risky Death Wishes from a design standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not the only changes we've made in terms of design space, and it's probably not the only one, and we'll probably keep doing more. Another recent one, against which I've seen some criticism,
Mm-hmm.
is oh shit, I'm gonna say something like it's a monster card. Help me out. It's Carantier. Oh god.
Yes.
Yeah, so Carantier, we added this limitation to it that you would only be able to spawn a unit with a provision cost of 10 or less.
Mm-hmm.
And this is exactly one of these trends where we need this to have more space in terms of design. Because as long as Carantier is able to target absolutely any units, then we just cannot print a monster unit with strong provision and low power and a strong order. It completely removed that possibility from us.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you add that protection current here, now you have all of that space that you can explore, and you know that current here is not going to be a problem.
Nice. Well explained for sure. Moving on. Will you make the same provision for cards with similar abilities? For instance, Royal Decree, Call of the Forest, Ellerin, Afron, Hellegrand, Morkvark, Sweers, Boris, Toad Prince. The list goes on.
Um, yes and no. Okay, so first of all, a lot of these cards which are called like having similar abilities, it's not always necessarily the case. So, for instance, we didn't properly explain it at the time, but we made that change to Toad Prince, right? Where we increased the value of the consume to 4, and people reacted by saying, "Hey, what about spheres?" Um, the thing is, even though they look similar, they exist in very different environments. So there's the obvious ones, which is spheres is seize, not consume. And there is more value to being able to seize something than being able to consume it, because if you seize an engine, well, it keeps ticking, right?
Yeah.
Um, then there is actually the environment in which these cards evolve. So like the beast synergies at the moment in Monster, they're not really there. But Swears is a soldier, and there is definitely soldier synergies. So this is one of the things from which you're gaining more value, right? And the thing that actually made us think that it was fine to make that change, Toad Prince, is that in Monster you don't have a lot of great option to ping down cards to set
True.
them up, right? So whiffing is a pretty big risk. But NG exists in as more of these options, and so Swears is more reliably able. I'm not saying Spheres is a great card, right? I'm not saying it's on the level of that Todd Priest is at the moment. But yeah, if you add Spheres at 4, it would be much stronger than Todd Priest can be, for instance. Um, and so all of this consideration means that we don't necessarily want to put them at the same provisions. And there's another argument, which is that it's something we're trying to push more and more, because in oncoming factions used to be pretty similar, but factions should not have access to the same tools,
Yeah.
and they don't, right? So a faction kind of exists in its own world, well, like um, if you have you can have an ability in one faction be at a certain price, and the same ability in another faction be at another price, and you could imagine both of these being played because you you don't necessarily have a choice.
Yeah.
It's something that's offered to you, and as long as we balance on other stuff, this kind of thing can be fine to exist.
Yeah. Yeah, we used to have that in the past where you were sometimes you would just play a card because it made sense in terms of like just value just for playing it just for pure value. It
Yep.
doesn't matter what the design behind it was. You just had to play it, and it was like an auto include, which limited your deck building like, capabilities there.
Yep.
So I totally understand that.
And at the same time, some
Mhm.
of the cards that were mentioned are neutral, and historically we've kind of had this approach of like you can find in your faction cards that are better than the neutral equivalent.
Mhm.
And yeah, we're not too happy about this nowadays. And we don't know, we don't necessarily know yet how exactly we can make neutral fit in the deck building space of Gwent. But this is definitely something that we have in mind
No.
and want to explore.
Nice. Cool. We still have a lot, and we're
Yeah,
like
sorry.
46 minutes in, so we'll try to go a little bit quicker
Okay.
here.
Okay.
Can you strengthen the bounty archetype? And if you're going to do it, how are you going to do it? Open question.
So Bounty is played.
It's true.
There is actually a pretty interesting syndicate um, Pirate Cove mid-range bounty deck. Now, what is true is that the full-on bounty deck that Price of Power was kind of gearing for has not been necessarily working out too much, and we'll probably take a look at it in the future.
Mm-hmm. Cool. What do you think about creating a keyword that makes it impossible for a unit to get stronger / do more points than are contained in the keyword, as it is with Gord now, which I hate?
Yeah. The quick answer is that so this is more of my personal opinion, but
Mm-hmm.
I really don't like this kind of limits. Um, I'm not saying I don't like doing it on Chord, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in general, I don't like putting this kind of limits because it's not very eloquent. Elegancy is also something important in design.
Yeah.
And on Gord, it's a change that we had to do for design space reasons, the same way as Guaranteer.
Mm-hmm.
But it is definitely more of an exception to the rule, and not something that we want to be actively pushing on everything.
Cool. Well said. How do you feel about the current amount of playable decks / factions, and what are you doing to address this situation?
So variety in general is something that we're it's probably one of our primary goals.
Mm-hmm.
Because usually the more variety there is in the decks that players consider viable, and the more fun it is. Um, and so to do this, like we try to focus on old archetypes and try to think of way we can bring them back. The problem is that it, like it's always kind of this weird dance
Mm-hmm.
where you want to introduce new stuff to the game,
Yeah.
um, and by doing so, there's a good chance that you're kind of gonna break the balance. And at the same time, you want the game to be balanced and to have a lot of different variable things, but this is a process which needs to be very iterative. And like the closer you get to it, the smaller you do changes, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's an internal dilemma of multiplayer games, live ones, um, where you need content for the game to feel fresh and cool, and at the same time you want the environment to be nice and varied.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. You have to
balancing these
keep.
odds isn't easy.
Yeah, you have to keep it like going all the time, right? And that's
Yeah,
kind of the problem. Like every month should feel like you're something is changing in a way which is making, the game more exciting or fun to play, or, boosting other cards or other archetypes just to give some new tools and new some stuff, just to play with.
yeah.
But yeah, I totally get that. Your thoughts on Vilgefortz, Renegade, and Rings overall?
Wow. So
Great
okay, so
cards.
Renegade first. I think Renegade is uh I think the way Renegade has been used in meme decks, sure, but you need cards for everyone, right?
Yeah.
But it has been very interesting, right? It's spawned a lot of completely crazy, wacky decks. I think there was this one guy that had an end full of Masquerade Ball. Um, so yeah, Renegade is. I mean, we had hope for it to be uh m- to see more use
Mm-hmm.
as potentially a tech high end incursion. This hasn't really. We haven't seen a lot of these yet. Um, but in terms of in terms of meme potential, the card definitely saw use, and we think it's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Um, for Ryan's, uh, there was a lot of strong opinion when that card came out. But the truth is, for a good time, it saw a bunch of use in NG Hyperfin
Yeah.
and some pretty good uses. So Hyperfin is a bit out of the meta at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but like it's out there. It's out there.
Nice. Cool. Moving on. Questions about Heatwave and Yen's Invocation. These two cards offer instant removal, bypass armor, shield, veil. Don't have a power or provision cap, but can't be interrupted or played around by the opponent. Do you presume that they have a negative influence on the variety of decks?
Okay. Well, they have an influence on the variety of deck for sure, because um, some niche strategy struggle more when you have these single target removal that exists in the meta space. At the same time, they also uh, prevent you. They also prevent some of the most crazy strategies from becoming the top meta stuff,
Yeah.
which is very important. And another thing to consider is that um, these cards are really important in terms of player expression. So basically, cards which don't have a fixed worth, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
dependent on when you use them and on what you use them for. And a lot of player skill can be expressed through these cards in terms of like what do you choose to target,
Mm-hmm.
you knowing your opponent deck,
Yeah.
knowing what might come, and when is the best time to use them.
Mm-hmm.
And also, a lot of the time, if these cards haven't received outside boosts, you're actually trading card for card.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily a positive trade. I mean, you're like, it can be positive value through provision.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, like with in the case of Yennefer Invo, there's like there's some synergies with other stuff that NG is able to do. But yeah.
Nice. Well said. Regarding the balance of price of power style of card drops, was each drop tested balanced separately, or were they all cards available to test balance from the start? How did the process look like?
Yes, we tested them separately. In fact, we had an iterative approach.
Mm-hmm.
Where like we designed the first expansions first, the second, and the third. We add like when we jumped in the first, we usually had some goals of like, okay, so we think we're gonna evolve in that direction. Sometimes we even have like card design already prepared. Like, okay, yeah, we really want to do this there, and that means we need to prepare for it before.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but still, we went iteratively, and I think it can be felt, for instance, in Skellige, in like in the evolution, from the first drop to the third, or even NG, where we ended up quickly realizing that that we didn't want it to do self deck manipulation
Mm-hmm.
for pre-consecutive drops.
No. Cool. What is the decision-making process behind the regular +1, -1 power/provision changes? For example, last Fukusia change, since the card seems unbalanced due to a strong deploy ability, how is -1 power decided? So already like calling you out.
Yeah, so we get a lot of love for the power and provision changes that we do. Where, like, we change them one at a time, and players think that it has no impact. We actually have so many occasions of people telling us this is not going to have an impact, and it's having a massive impact.
Yeah.
Of cards getting like +1 provision, and then no one plays it anymore. And it makes you really scared, actually. So specifically in the case of Fukushia, um, um, so when that change was made, Fukushia was also less prominent in Skellige than it evolved to be today. Also, I'm not quite sure I follow the connection between power and deploy.
Yeah.
Like, if like at the end of the
Two different
day,
things.
the deploy is points. Like,
Yes.
the card is bringing you points, right? So if you lower its power, it's still gonna have an effect in terms
Yes.
of the total value that you can expect from the card and how much you're willing to play it. Well, arguably, considering the current proportion at which Fukushia is played, it didn't deter player too much.
It's still
But
well
what I'm trying
known.
to say is that it's not always the case, and this is stuff that can be hard to evaluate.
Yeah. Exactly. Question now about Saskia. Can Saskia be something like Bratton's? Saskia is one provision more expensive than Bratton's. For example, Saskia, Harmony, deploy, create and play a bronze ST unit from your starting deck, or play a bronze ST unit from your deck with 4 provisions, or with 5 or less provision, depending.
That's interesting because I was talking earlier about design philosophy being different, and also earlier I was talking about the fact that we wanted faction, that each factions don't need to have the same tools, basically. And for instance, so we also acknowledge that it used to be that way in oncoming, right? Where you have a lot of cards which shared similar effects, but it's not the way we view the game nowadays. And we would not want for the card to become a copy of Braffen, a Braffen-like card. Because Braffen is his own thing,
Exactly.
and Saskia is too. Um, so these are the types of direction that we don't necessarily consider.
Yeah, and it's also something that
Um,
you mentioned like previously, like two cards cannot be pretty much the same thing, right?
yeah,
And
yeah, exactly.
two different factions cannot have the same tools in their toolbox. Like you cannot be a copy and work and in a different faction in this case.
And there's an interesting thing in the Kids of Saskia, where very much something where we learned when we added Harmony on Saskia. What we had in mind was not necessarily that we wanted player to feel like it's an Harmony card, but rather we were like, well, in NG, adding assimilates to card has been really working out. You gain a few points from it. It's always a nice way to gain value, and it doesn't mean that you have to run them in an assimilate deck necessarily. Um, and so we added Harmony on Saskia thinking that, well, it's gonna give you 2-3 points. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And it's actually completely shifted the player perception of Saskia to be an Harmony card. And so suddenly we had questions such as, hey, why is the deploy not playing these cards
Yeah.
instead of playing them? And so yeah, this is a good example of the times where, like, you don't necessarily expect that a change like this is going to change player perception like this. So we keep learning.
Exactly. Cool. What is the dev's opinion on the amount of control decks in the meta? Something that we're also discussing today. It will always be the dominant because it's a safe gameplay. You can't disrupt, easy to play, and it's pushing new cards toward doesn't get removed equals win the game or having some form of carryover. That's a lot. But coming back to it, like, how do you feel about the amount of control decks in the meta?
I actually feel like there isn't that many at the moment. So okay, of course there's Skellige Reckless Fury. It's like the very dominant control deck at the moment. There is some control, like there's always the Keltulis monster deck, but it's also a very specific type of control, like it's a bit different.
Mm-hmm.
The Pirate Cove Bounty deck is doing control too.
Mm-hmm.
But for instance, Coyatel, which used to be, the faction that was always running these unit decks, I believe that at the moment they are closer to um, doing this very like high value special, right? With like Simlas and big gourds and
Mm-hmm.
a lot of bountiful harvests.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of other decks out there. So I don't feel like there is actually that many control decks that are prevalent at the moment. As to them being dominant, I also don't think it's that true, because usually control, they have less points, right? They have less raw value, and so the way they make value is by targeting engines, right? Which start off as low points, but come up with value as they go. And so the usual trinity is that they get beaten by point slam, and with decks becoming, I feel like nowadays decks are like very wide in the type of strategy that they're able to use. They usually have some point slam. They have some engines. They all, of course, they usually take some control, but I don't feel that the full control direction is
Mm-hmm.
an easy way out.
Yeah,
And
yeah. Agreed
and
here.
and there's even an interesting thing, which is control is actually really countered. I mean, not countered, but like it feels really weird to play control against control,
Mm-hmm.
and especially no unit decks, right?
Yeah.
Because suddenly, what is your control for?
Yeah. I like control. Don't get me wrong. And any game that I play, it's like it's really nice to have the power of. But I also feel like right now maybe I'm not the best player or the one that plays the most, but I also don't feel like looking at the meta
Mm.
is like control heavy in this case.
Uh,
Um,
there's a constant, which is that players usually really like playing control, but they
yeah,
really don't like playing against it.
yeah, yeah. What are your thoughts about the process of removing gold immunity?
Oh, whoa, that happened a long time ago. I was still in school. I was still dreaming of working on Gwent.
People are still kind of salty about gold immunity. I don't know
Really?
why, because it was non-interactable. Like you would just, have a
Yeah.
full, board of units, and then you would slam something, you make them all. I think it was Hansel that would make
Um.
everything gold, and
Yeah,
everybody
yeah.
would be happy about that.
I remember that from the close beta day. That was really annoying. Actually, I do understand why. It's because uh, playing only through your own side of the board is fun,
Hmm.
and getting interrupted when you're doing so is
It's
not.
not fun.
But this isn't. But the thing is not what Gwent is. Gwent is not about building your little sandcastle in your own side. It is very much about interacting with your opponent.
Yeah.
Sometimes that means that your main game plan is not going to work out, and you have to play in a different way. That's fine.
Yeah.
Um, and in the case of gold immunity, yes, as Buja said, it was highly uninteractive, and Gwent is actually a lot about interactions. It's about interaction, of course, through the path system,
Hmm.
through the way you decide to order your cards, um, eh, through these cards I mentioned, like Heatwave, which allows you to um, like find value, like express value in skills literally.
Hmm.
Um, and in Homecoming they even decided to develop even more, right, through
Yeah.
the addition of mechanics out of order.
True. Yeah, I mean, someone also mentioned this in chat. It's like some people want, the possibility of like building your own sandcastle and not letting anyone
And,
interact with it.
and I completely understand that. This is very fun.
Yeah.
And I also know the frustration of like not being able to do the thing that you want to do.
Yeah,
But
everybody knows playing any card game. Like when
yeah,
you have, like, let's say you have the perfect hand, you know how to line up, sequence everything, so you get the perfect outcome. There is always something that will happen which will not, let
yeah,
you happen. That will not let you, fulfill that dream or that scenario that you're thinking about. But that's kind of the cool thing about it, because when you land it
yeah,
perfectly, you get this like rush of adrenaline. You're happy that it happened, and the dopamine hits, and it's awesome. But then
exactly.
it only happens from time to time, so it's like it's in a controlled
Yeah.
environment. Yeah,
And the truth is, if you were always able to build a sandcastle perfectly, you would be bored
yeah,
very fast.
yeah. Because you'll be playing the same thing over and over,
Yeah.
and you get to a point of like, what's the
Yeah.
point of this? I'm
You
just
want to be challenged.
Yeah, you want to be challenged in some way, and you want to play differently. You want to like change the way how you sequence things, how you play, which goes first, which goes next. Like
Yeah.
you want to have more fun with it, right? So I totally get that. Okay, we're close to the end. 3 last questions. Can we expect more risky design, aka resembling better cards in the next sets? If yes, can we hope Old Necker and Consume in general for monsters will ever make a comeback? Jesus Christ,
Okay.
hopefully not.
I feel like this is not fair.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of, I was talking about evolution of our design. I
Mm-hmm.
feel like we've done, we went for riskier stuff actually.
Yeah.
And because risky is also exciting. Um, so I'm a bit hurt. I'm not gonna lie. Now,
Yeah, we're more risky now, I think. We're
yeah,
more like going, balls to the wall, as they say. We're going more crazy now.
yeah. Now the thing is, Beta Gwent is a completely different game from modern Gwent. That's
Mm-hmm.
very important to understand. And I think actually, I think if you go back to like footage of old tournaments or stuff, you see interactions. You're like, oh my god, that would be so broken today. Like I went to watch the first no, that wasn't get Webmaster. What was it called? The invitational tournament with like life coach and
Yeah, yeah,
Trump,
Gwen Slam.
Gwen Slam. And I went to watch some games and I saw there was like a 50-point difference and I was like, why is the guy not passing? And then he played like weather and he
And
and he got like
everything like,
70 points because the
yeah,
entire row went down to 1 power and I was like, oh my god, that's not fun.
crazy power swings like from one point to
Exactly.
the other was just. It
Um
was too crazy. It was too crazy,
yeah,
and that is also now fun to play against, right? Like, so for players who like, who like to do their thing or like to accumulate a lot of power, and knowing that you can, just do this and get all of that out is
yeah,
just like crazy. That's why we also changed the way how weather works, because yeah, it worked
yeah.
totally differently back in the day.
And so I think it actually joins up the golden immunity question where like it definitely adds some fun to it. I
Mm-hmm.
remember playing the consume insectoid beta decks with like, the row would become so full of units. The UI was glitching out.
Yeah.
And it is really fun. Um but it's Sandcastle.
Yeah, the old
Uh
Necker consume was just that. You were just playing your thing, getting those Neckers to a
yeah,
highest value as possible, and then just playing them out, and where they
yeah,
were like with crazy numbers, and then your opponent could not interact, or old dwarves, when you were able also to like make crazy points on them and also make them totally like carry over through rounds.
yeah,
That was just, you go to round 3 and your opponent carries over something which has, I don't know, like 50 powers. Like, what are you supposed to do with that? It's like, if you don't have one card which counters that, you're pretty much screwed. You can't do anything, right?
basically Beta Gwent had a lot more emphasis on card synergies, which is all of the Sandcastle aspect.
Mm-hmm.
And to make up for it, it had to have a lot crazier control effects.
Mm-hmm.
And so it created this very crazy environment where one card could both not have any value or actually be the only reason that you're winning the game.
Yeah.
And I think with Homecoming Gwent, the game was more trying to be more subtle in how points are won and lost, closer to like the auction spirit that is like the core of Gwent, right? Of like, I need to commit as less resources as possible to win the round.
No. Okay, two last ones. When the power of cards systematically increase, the impact of leaders becomes lower and lower. Are limited impact leaders plus strong cards a part of design philosophy right now, or we should expect leader power to catch up to power creep soon? Power creep once again. Buzzword.
Well, yeah, this is a really interesting question. So the first thing is, I don't really. I mean, there is definitely the cards have been getting stronger. Yes, and one day I will have the occasion to tell you why I think it's a good thing. But I don't think the increase is as dramatic as players sometimes making out to be. That being said, leader abilities exist in a different realm as cards, right? It was actually one of the very important change that happened before I joined, of removing these leader abilities, which were directly tied to cards in your deck or in your graveyard, because the value of these abilities was dependent on the value of the cards that you were able to play. Um, and so what it means is that a leader ability doesn't need to be compared to a card anymore. It can be compared to other leader abilities, right? It is true that we haven't necessarily looked back at leader abilities in that way of like what proportion do we want, like what should be the ratio between leader abilities and cards in terms of value. But at the same time, we've also evolved the design of them to be more and more synergistic with specific stuff, right? And that makes the value not only harder to evaluate, it also means that a lot of the value of your leader ability is actually coming out from the cards that you're playing. Which means that they end up naturally becoming relative to your deck.
Nice. Yeah. Well said for sure. Last one, also a call out. Why do you make expansions that only support one archetype instead of making an expansion that supports and enhances different archetypes? Sean, why? Why?
Not
Tell
fair.
us why.
That is not fair.
That is not fair. You should be supporting
I talked
everything.
about NG in Price of Power earlier. So each of the expansion have actually supported a completely different thing. NG of the first Price of Power drop was about self deck manipulation. NG from the second drop was geared towards spying.
Exactly.
And NG from the third drop was more assimilate, right? With like the graveyard interactions. That's three different things.
Yes. Yes. Exactly.
So now if you go to NR, where we were developing something that was basically new, which were like the mages and patience, well, we needed these free drops because we needed them to make the deck exist. Everybody has NR in mind nowadays because, well, obvious reasons. But it only really came out to be after the third expansion. Thanks to the work that had been done in the two previous ones.
Exactly. So it plays into that, right? It goes.
Exactly.
It's a step by step iterative like process that you get to. It's not that it happens instantly.
And even when you look at Skellige, it turns out that even though there is like a common line between the three expansions, the first drop feels very different from what was done afterward, right?
Exactly.
And it ends up seeing some different uses. So the simple answer is we do support different stuff, But when we don't, it's because we need that many cards to support one stuff.
Exactly. Plus, you can't change everything at once. It would make everything broken. Like it would be all over the place. You cannot do that. It doesn't, like, balance doesn't work that way. Cool. That was the last question then. I've taken a lot of your time today, but this was awesome. I already saw comments from people saying that you should come back more often, and for sure we'll do so. Because, yeah, I mean, you give really good insight into what you guys are thinking. I also saw questions of people saying, like, we would like to hear about this philosophy when it comes to balance. I think it's very difficult in a short stream to talk about your philosophy for each faction, for each archetype, for, it's like, it's a lot. So
And
yeah.
it evolves, we're learning. I can confidently say that our views and my views on the game and on the faction is completely different now that it was 1 year ago.
Yeah.
And that makes it even harder sometimes to explain this kind of stuff. It's also
Yeah.
stuff that we do feel, but it doesn't mean we shouldn't try. And I'll see what I can do.
Awesome. Cool, man. Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Thank you, everybody, for watching. And yeah, hopefully we can see you soon. And we'll see who will be coming to Twig next week. And yeah, don't forget, World Masters this weekend, 4 p.m. CET. Watch
Important.
it. Watch it. Get the good stuff. Watch it. And yeah, don't forget about Divination Challenge. You have time till 11:59, so almost midnight today. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you all. Have a good one. Bye.
See everyone.